Delighted now to be joined by Claude Geoghegan from the Galway Hurling Committee to look ahead to round 4 in the Galway Senior Hurling Championship and then look ahead to the intermediate quarterfinals this weekend. Claude, we've been involved this year with the Galway Hurling Committee as chairperson. How have you felt the championships have ran so far?
Paul, thanks for having me on. Pretty good, Paul. I think in general we've been pretty fortunate in the way things have fallen in terms of weather conditions. I suppose as a result of the time of year we've started the championship as well due to the new split season, it's definitely helped in that way. I think we can see with a 16-team format competition, like things will get run off a bit quicker than obviously with our 24 teams in senior, as you can see with the intermediate quarterfinals and being on this weekend. But in general, we're happy enough. The clubs have been incredibly good in terms of dealing with us. When we've asked for, Friday night games and things like that, they've been very accommodating. And, by and large, we're pretty happy with how things are progressing.
Is that something you mentioned there, Friday night games, that maybe possibly we might see more of as?
Yeah, like we mentioned it, it was one of the things myself and Damien McGrath, the secretary of the hurling committee that's come in this year as well, mentioned to their clubs when we first met them that, Friday night lights, as we'll call it, was something that we were very interested in. In fairness, I think it has gone pretty well. I think most of the clubs have taken part in it. We're probably happy enough. Probably from a player point of view, as long as their, I suppose, travel commitments in terms of if they were coming from Dublin or something, it might curtail them. But other than that, I'd say the Friday nights is pretty popular with them, obviously, and their families. It gives them a bit of a social element as well for the weekend, to do something if they so wish. I suppose in terms of will it continue into the future, I would hope so. I think we've broken new ground with that this year. But it probably depends a little bit on infrastructure as well. Obviously, in terms of the actual lights aspect and Friday night lights, as we call it, we've balanced low. That's kind of our limitations at the moment. We were probably lucky when the championship started this year. We were able to play some Friday evening games in daylight, and we were able to play a game in Loughrea and a few fixtures in Athenry as well. Into the future, one hopes maybe if Pearse Stadium may have lights into the future, and if it does, we'll be certainly looking to avail of that. Yeah.
How have you found first year of the split season? You're obviously focused, when I suppose with the hurling committee, was the intercounty. Now it switches to the club. Like overall, have you found it running much better this year than other years?
Yeah, like from my point of view, listen, it's like anything. There's always something can be tweaked a little, but I think in general, the split season so far, from our point of view, has certainly been a success. It gives fantastic clarity to everybody. Allows for competitions to be played at a specific period in time, obviously with little caveats attached to it, but by and large, people know when they're playing. From a personal point of view, it's been very good. I suppose even from the administration point of view, the hurling committee, like you very much have your two boxes, your intercounty season and your club season. And like I'd be in general a supporter of it so far to date anyway, definitely.
Previously, you were with St. Thomas's, and even we had Kevin Lally on there a few weeks ago. They really still look like they're going to be the team to beat this year again, going on all current form so far, unbeaten, I suppose, in this senior A Group 1.
Yeah, I suppose you'd have to respect their Thomas's position. Having won 4 in a row, like you'd have to keep them as favourites naturally. Like they are 3 out of 3 this year. I'd say if you ask them honestly, are they happy with their performances? They had an exceptional performance the first day and an exceptional game of hurling against Sarsfield's. Sarsfield's doing immense work and clearly are going to be a team not just in the business end this year, but for the years to come. Obviously being in the under-28 final as well next Wednesday. But going back to Thomas's, yeah, listen, they're going to be in the mix. You know what I mean? Like it will take a very good team to beat Thomas's. They're obviously there to be shot at, but you'd have to imagine they're going to be in the mix. Yeah.
What makes them such a special group, I suppose, from seeing them up close and personal for you?
I suppose like it's hard to pinpoint one thing. Like you could say they're very open to coaching and all the rest of them. They are. It's the player's own drive. You can't replicate that in terms of it. They either have it or they don't. They their commitment to excellence, I suppose, is gigantic, and their just want and will to win is it was something like I'd been involved in the team. It was delight to be around, and it doesn't show any sign of abating. They've probably got into a habit of winning now, and like any habit, a habit is hard to break. And they just have a sensational will to win. Probably been fortunate over the few years that since Thomas has made the breakthrough in 12, and I suppose with the more recent victories that there's someone been feeding into the team nearly every year. Whether it be the likes of Oisin Flannery, Evan Duggan, John Hayes, this year Conor Hayes, and that probably helps keeps a bit of a freshness too, and been fortunate that way, I suppose too.
It's safe to say if you're looking at one of the games of the weekend, this weekend, one that a lot of hurling fans in Galway will be excited about is Thomas's clash on Saturday, the 17th September, in Kenny Park at 3:15 against Turlockmore.
Yeah, listen, it is like it has all the makings of what should be a good game. Obviously, Thomas is reigning champions with beating Turlockmore in the final 2 years ago, a COVID final, let's say. But like that game I was involved in that game myself. It was incredibly close. Turlock were, I think, ahead, let's say, with definitely 10 minutes to go. And, it was the smallest of margins. It could easily have been Turlockmore winning that day. If they had, there could have been no complaints about it. They would have been worthy winners too. They probably didn't perform to the levels that they can last year. And they've certainly bounced back well this year. I know they were defeated by Clarenbridge, but like Clarenbridge are, there's 4 or 5 teams in the county that are every bit as good as each other, and Clarenbridge are one of those. They had a very good performance, Turlockmore against Castlegar, obviously. And again, got the business done very early against Clonmerdale in the last round as well. Turlockmore, there's an abundance of hurlers. I've taught a few of them in school, and there's an abundance of hurlers in Turlockmore. Massive talent, and that talent will show eventually. There's no doubt about it, and possibly sooner rather than later.
The thing with Turlockmore, I suppose, in this campaign is a lot of injuries they did have early on, but they're starting to get them back. But even, I think Sean Loftus wasn't involved with the county, but he's definitely putting his hand up. Like he's very close to, I think, being a top scorer in this championship so far from play.
Yeah, Sean's an immensely talented hurler. I taught Sean in school, and like even from a young age, you could see the skill level Sean had. Maybe being away from the county panel this year in its own way might have helped Sean to push on again. I'm sure he's determined probably to get back in there, and his performances this year have been exceptional. Like his scoring return this year for Turlockmore, as you pointed out, have been excellent. And that's a side of the game that Sean has obviously really developed this year, and it's helped Turlockmore's performances no end.
Does this game suit Turlock? Do you feel kind of coming under the radar a slight bit against Thomas's? People are expecting Thomas's, I suppose, to secure top spot with a victory over Turlock this weekend.
Possibly, I suppose they'll be the underdogs. But like I referred to, that fine 2 years ago could have gone either way. Like you could be talking about Turlock having back-to-back championships if they had won that final, for instance, with the talent available to them. Listen, if you're Turlockmore, it's a good position to be in. You're, as you say, possibly under the radar a bit. You're playing a team that you definitely want to get one over, given the history, obviously, of a few years ago, and it's probably a good position to be in, with, as you said, as you're right to point out, a few players coming back from injury as well, and a few players showing really good form. It is a good position for Turlockmore to be in from, yeah.
It's one really as well, Claude, isn't it? Like when you're looking at matchups and players on either side, like you're looking at Turlockmore, Dahi Ronan Burke, Kevin Hussey, Jamie Holland, even Fergal Moore has been up in the forward, Sean Loftus, and then you're looking at Thomas's, the Burks, Evan Duggan, Oisin Flannery, like these players, the Coonies as well, like there's matchups here in this game all over the field that like it's definitely one which you'd be expecting a good crowd like to go and see these matchups over the weekend.
Yeah. Obviously, from the committee point of view, we'll be hoping to see a good crowd. Like there's an enormous amount of talent on show on both teams. People who have played for Galway in the past, who are currently playing for Galway, and probably will play for Galway in the future. Like as you rightly pointed out, there's been intriguing tactical battles all over the place. Like in terms of who's positioned where, like where does Dahi Burke play? Does he pick someone up, or does Thomas's, let's say, man mark Dahi Burke, or vice versa? You know, Conor Cooney, and like it does provide an awful lot of intrigue for people. I think you know, the neutral would certainly want to go to see what way the two teams will line up tactically, how they'll line up, and to see how they'll try and negate each other. It'll certainly be an interesting one from that point of view. Yeah.
Do you think Thomas's experiences might just get them over this one?
I suppose, listen, from my experience of being involved with Thomas's and from the last few years of just looking in, you can never write them off. There's been a few occasions in the last few years when you say, oh, they should have been beaten, and they managed to find a way. In saying that, I think you right said it, Turlockmore coming in from a good position. I really do think it's a 50-50 game. Thomas is obviously a little bit more stretched this year, given Shane Cooney's travels and David Sherry's injury. Like any club, if you were losing two of your starting six backs, it's going to stretch you a bit. So it's hard to call. Like I'd never back against Thomas's, I suppose, but no result there would surprise me.
The other two games in the Senior A Championship, Clarenbridge and Castlegare, Clymer Daly and Sarsfield. That Clarenbridge Castlegare game, it feels like a really significant game for Castlegare. Like, I'll say 0 points from their opening 3 games, but they're looking to kind of get a result here at the weekend, hope results go their way, and kind of put themselves back into this championship.
Yeah, well, it's essential. They have to win. It's as simple as that. And it is a vital game for them. I've seen their last 2 performances. I've seen them play against Sarsfield, St. Thomas's. The Sarsfield's game, Sarsfield's just about pulled away in the end, but you know, the 6 points maybe flattered them a little bit. It was closer than that. And certainly I was in Pearse Stadium for the Castlegare and Thomas's match, and that certainly could have gone. At the very least, Castlegare could have got a draw that day. Like, it was a level coming up to injury time. The 6 points flattered Thomas's for a finish that day, there's no doubt. Like, Castlegare, while they've no points, have been very competitive in their last 2 fixtures. You know, they have an excellent management team. Like, obviously Johnny Kelly's been appointed to the Offaly position since the last round even, and like, his resume is unbelievable. You know, Castlegare, from my point of view, were incredibly well set up the last day. Got an awful lot right, and just in the last few minutes, things just didn't bounce for them. Like Clarenbridge, I suppose a bit like Turlockmore, talent levels there are huge. Clarenbridge have a lot of scoring forwards, and when you're scoring forwards, you always have a chance, and they have an abundance of them. Possibly have the informed player in the championship in Mark Kennedy. Really going well as well. Really nice guy, Mark. Great to see him back fully, I suppose, fully fit from the injury difficulties he had maybe for the last year or so. Important for Castlegare to keep them in the championship. Important for Clarenbridge to as well to try and cement a top 2 place for them, perhaps. So it is, like, I suppose with the setup of the championship, like, all of the games tend to have something riding on them, and this is no different.
Is Durfar proven throughout this championship to be, I suppose, one of the greatest players who's played in the Galway Senior Hurling Cup Championship? Because if you look at his performance in the last round and what he's still doing at his age and the scores and everything he's contributing.
Oh yeah, class is permanent, and Jar Farrer is an abundance of class on the hurling field. His ability, his scoring ability is, I think, is well known in Galway hurling circles. Not just in free taking, but like, he's one of the most accurate shooters I think that's ever played in Galway hurling. You give a ball to Joe Farrer in a yard of space anywhere from 80 yards, and it's a fair chance he's going to put the ball over the bar. And you know, as you rightly point out, like Joe's getting on, he knows that himself, I'm sure, but his hurling brain is huge. You know, he's still out around the middle of the field. He finds himself in pockets of space, but he puts himself there. And in fairness to his teammates, they recognise Joe's talent and ability to take those opportunities, and you know, they put themselves in a position to get him into those pockets of space too. A fantastic club hurler, has been a fantastic servant to Castlegar, and you know, to Galway GA in general, just a really, really stylish, classy hurler.
Obviously, we mentioned there it's so significant for Castlegar this weekend to stay in it. It is significant as well for Clymer Daly, but the one thing about Clymer Daly is just they have got a few heavy beatings. So just with that goal difference, like you nearly feel their main aim now is just to try and avoid the relegation. But like ultimately, like Castlegar have to get a result this weekend against Sarsfields as well.
Yeah, like obviously they're in a difficult position. Like qualifying is going to be difficult for them. But I suppose the Sarsfields game brings a few things. If they can manage to beat Sarsfields, I suppose it pulls Sarsfields back towards them as well. With Sarsfields, you know, having won one, lost one, and drawn one, so it puts them back in their, I suppose, orbit. But also, like, it's a big rivalry game, you know, like, and you can't beat a derby to get a performance. You know, I don't doubt Clymer Daly been disappointed with the performance to date. They're a better team than that, and I'd be surprised if we don't see a better performance from them this weekend, especially given, you know, it's a local derby. I'd be expecting somewhat of a backlash from Clymer Daly. Like, again, huge talent. Obviously, everyone knows Brian Buchanan's an immense talent. His goal scoring abilities are huge. But like, they've had players there for the last few years who've been doing very well for them at club level as well. Like Luke Linsky gets 2 or 3 points every day. You know, really, really useful club forward. And obviously, like Brian Burke, a bit like when I said with Gerald Farrer, just gets the ball the yard of space, it's going to be a score. So like, Clymer Day can still put up a score. And I'd expect them to have a much improved performance. Sarsfields, on the other hand, like as I mentioned at the top, I think Sarsfields are and one of those teams, let's say, that are a common force in Galway. They're just incredibly well-run club, always are. Like, all you have to do is look at their infrastructure projects the last few years. Amazing working on, but like, they never lose sight of the development of their hurling teams either. In the under-20 A final again next Wednesday night after winning the under-20 league, you look at that under-20 team and you look at their senior team, and already quite an amount of that under-20 team are making massive impacts. Obviously, everyone know John Cooney, Alex Kinnear, but the young Murphy man as well. And like, there's, again, Sarsfields always seem to have talent, but they always seem to develop and make the most of their talent as well.
It's remarkable, really, because if you look, say, at the teams, I suppose, in minor level, you've always had your Turlocks and Clarenbridge there. Like, it's not as if Sarsfields have been winning A titles, and as you talk about winning the league and now in a final.
Yeah, like, I suppose it shows the continuous development work that Sarsfields do. You know, that they mightn't be winning every competition all the way up, but it doesn't mean that there isn't a development of that age group going on. You know, maybe something akin like to Corofin with the football, in that by the time they're 2021, they're going to have a number of players who are going to be very good senior hurlers, even if they mightn't have been household names, you know, as being a county minor or something. Sarsfield seem to have a very good knack of developing these players into being excellent club hurlers, and some of them, of course, pushing on to intercounty level as well. But like, all you have to do is look at the work that they do with underage, even their 20s, their under-20 management team. Like, Pádraig Earl's involved. He was involved with Colin Murray when they would have won the senior before. Francis Madden, of course, another one involved, who's been involved with the Sarsfields seniors before and involved with County Camogie at the moment. Like, they've really good personnel put in place all over their club, really, for the development as well. They are a great model, I think, to a lot of clubs to follow.
Do you feel Clymer Daly or Castlegar can cause shocks, or do you feel we could have the 4 kind of
I
cemented this
suppose,
weekend.
yeah, like I suppose on form, you'd have to say, like on form, you'd you'd expect Sarsfields to come through and Clarenbridge to come through, but uh, like Clarenbridge, lots of talent scoring forwards. As I said, when you're scoring forwards, you always have a chance. But Castlegar's last 2 performances have been good. They have been much better, and better, particularly their last performance was better than the result would have suggested. Um, they could well give a fair rattle of a game to Clarenbridge. Like just on form, you'd probably have to say Clarenbridge and Sarsfields. But listen, these are senior A teams, and they're senior A teams for a reason. They're senior A teams because they have a lot of talent and have proven that over the last few years. So again, like if Clymer Daly or if Castlegar go and win it the weekend, it shouldn't be a shock to anybody.
Just in them games at the weekend, 1:45 in Pearse Stadium, Cambridge, Castlegar, and then 3:15 in Kenny Park, Clymer Daly and Sarsfields. The group table lies at the minute. Thomas is on top with 6 points, and you have Cambridge in second with 5. Then Turlockmore in third with 4 points. Sarsfields fourth with 3 points. Then Castlegar sitting on fifth with 0, and Clymer Daly in bottom place with 0 as well. Moving on into Group 2, this weekend in the Senior A Championship as well. Are Loughrea someone you feel that can be towards the end of the championship?
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose anyone who'll be talking to me about who I always fancy to win the championship, I always put Loughrea in the mix. I suppose a bit like Sarsfields, in some ways, Loughrea have a huge amount of young talent emerging. Their under 20 team was pretty good this year. Lost out to Capitagel in the A1 semi-final by a point or maybe 2. Very close game. Capitagel went on to win that competition. They've had an abundance of players, both play county minor and under 20 in the last number of years. You have a lot of that talent coming through between the Killians, obviously, and the Morgans, and so on and so forth. They have a really excellent club forward, sharpshooting forward in Jamie Ryan, always very high up in the scoring charts. Martin McMahon is going very well from this year and giving them that little bit of physicality as well that they maybe might need it a bit more of. They should be in the mix. Their game with Clarenbridge last year, quarterfinal, I believe, very close. You know what I mean? Really horrible conditions, bad day, made hurling very difficult on both teams that day. Clarenbridge probably shaded that day in fairness and deserved the victory, but Loughrea are a team that their younger players should have learned from that, I'd imagine. And Loughrea probably have, maybe more than most, is probably depth. A very good squad. And I'd say, Loughrea could easily bring 5 people off the bench that are every bit as good maybe as what's on the field. And that's a massive thing to have, because 15 players are not going to play well in one day. So having a bench that can make an impact is it's one of their strongest points, I'd say.
With this weekend, we were hyping up the Thomas's Turlockmore game, but to talk another game up here, Capitagel Loughrea first versus second, Loughrea on 6, Capitagel on 5, setting it up really nicely in this group.
Yeah, it's probably, in some ways, it might actually be the game of the weekend because familiarity breeds contempt as well. And these two clubs seemed to have played each other a lot in the last number of years, with the results going either way. I suppose I mentioned the under 20 game that they played as well. They seem to be on a similar trajectory in terms of their players. Their good young players are kind of the same age as each other as well as that. So, it's Capitagel have been one of the best teams in Galway for the last probably 5 or 6 years. Desperately unlucky probably in a few years at least not to qualify for a final. By their own standards, probably a bit disappointed last year, but have bounced back this year, obviously. Not the best performance the last day against Crowell, but still unbeaten in the championship. And at this, during the group stages, it's about getting the job done don't necessarily have to be doing it in style. Yeah, it probably is it's set up to be a really entertaining game because, as I say, they've a fair bit of history the last few years, and it should be a ding dong battle, I think.
Obviously, you'll have first and second in Group 1 and Group 2 going into straight into a quarterfinal, avoiding that preliminary quarterfinal. Whoever wins this weekend really kind of has that spot secured, you feel, to push into that quarterfinal.
Yeah, it would appear that way. Yeah, like they'd be in a very, very strong position going into the last round of games. Which I suppose is a great advantage like to have. It's not that you're going to take the foot out of the pedal, no team will ever do that, but I suppose it does give you the potential to maybe, if it's a 50-50 call, try maybe someone new or in the last round, or even if there's a niggle of an injury and you go, listen, we've cemented our top 2 spot now, we're going to, instead of having 2 weeks, you're going to have 4 weeks to recover. Like, that's a big difference. So it is a big prize to have for either club, yeah.
As well, in that group, we talked there earlier on about the teams that are struggling in Group 1, but in Group 2 here, it feels like it's absolutely massive between Gort and Kilkenarn. Both sit on 0 points, but with Craughwell on 3, if one of them win and Craughwell weren't to get a result against Tommy Larkins, like, it brings them straight back into the championship, especially for Gort, like, because they would have Craughwell in the final game.
Yeah, very much so. Like, that game is absolutely do or die to both clubs for the Kilkenarn and Gort. As you say, if you're right to point out, if Gort do manage to beat Kilkenarn, like, depending on how the Craughwell Tommy Larkins result goes, they could actually be in a relatively strong position. They might have their destiny in their own hands if Tommy Larkins managed to beat Craughwell, for instance. But it's an important game for both of them. Like, Kilkenarn's performances, I've only seen them once, but they're, like, just judging by their score and everything else, I know that they're struggling badly with injury this year. It hasn't been at the level they'd want. They certainly had a more progressive year last year, rightly qualified for senior A off the back of the results. And again, a club that have been going the right direction for a number of years now, at underage level, competing at the very top levels in A, and even their under 20 team this year, very unfortunate not to come out of their group even, so they've a lot going right. They just haven't had any luck at senior level this year in terms of the injuries, particularly have hit them very badly. Gort, on the other hand, a lot of experienced players, but also this year a bit of an injection of youth. David Hooban's come in this year to Gort, and he's introduced a few younger players and given them their game. Obviously, you have the likes of Nathan Gill playing a lot more common now. Someone who is to look forward to in the future. I think he'll be a very good club hurler, could even push beyond that in my eyes. But it's a really important game. Gort's performance against Tommy Larkins was pretty good. It didn't go well for them against Craughwell, or against Loughrea, I should say. But Loughrea can do that. I've seen Loughrea a few times this year, even in the league final against Turlockmore, where they put on a blitz of, I think at one stage they were probably about 13 points up against Turlockmore, and then Turlockmore came back into that game. So Loughrea can do that too. Like, they can put on a big score and blitz, and it's it can be hard to get back from that. But like, Gort have a lot of experienced players with massive know-how of won county titles, and in a do or die game, they'll know how to get a job done, I think.
With that as well, like Tommy Larkins up against Craughwell, like, whoever wins in that, it's similar. It can bring them back in for that first or second spot if results go the way, say, like if Loughrea to beat Captagal, obviously Captagal on 5, Tommy Larkins on 4, and Craughwell on 3.
Yeah, and I mentioned that familiarity breeds contempt between Cappy and Loughrea. I think, again, in the last probably 5 or 6 years, Tommy Larkins and Craughwell seem to have drawn against each other a huge amount. So two sides are very familiar with each other in terms of having played each other so much. And a bit like that, results going either way. I think Craughwell probably had the upper hand there for a good number of years. Tommy Larkins probably pulled back a few results lately. Yeah, it's a massive game for both. Tommy Larkins, it will push them on into major contention for a top 2 spot if they do win it. For Crowell, it gives them, puts them back in the mix with that, but it'll give them that bit of security before they play Gort. So it's probably essentially they'd have qualified, I think, if they win. So like that's obviously very big for them. Crowell have their performances. They would have been very disappointed with how they started against Loughrea. Like obviously, but Loughrea can do that, as I pointed out a minute ago. Like they started really quick. Loughrea left themselves too much to do, but by the end of the game, Crowell were coming strong in that game. So like that's a pretty good standard. Like they drew with Capitagal again, a game that could have gone either way. We're down to 14 in the first half. So like Crowell's performances perhaps been maybe a bit better than people have realised, like given the quality of the opposition they've been playing. Tommy Larkins have been actually very impressive this year. I've seen Tommy Larkins twice. I've seen them in the first game against Loughrea over in Ballinasloe, and I also saw them against Gort. And those two games are actually very entertaining games that they were involved in. The Duggan Park game was literally could have gone either way. If Tommy Larkins had won that game, no one could have complained. It could have been a draw. It was tit for tat battle against two teams who are in the upper echelons of the competition, I'd say. Again, same thing with Gort. Tommy Larkins probably would have been a bit disappointed had they not won that game, because they probably looked a bit more dominant at times, but when it came to it, they got the job done. And I think Tommy Larkins, the big players of Tommy Larkins are having great campaigns. Like obviously the household names like of Jason Flynn and Ronan Murphy, who are both on the inter-county squad, they're really delivering for Tommy Larkins this year. And again, two forwards like that, the likes of Conor Gardner, a great ball winner, who can score 3 or 4 points every day as well. Like that's, in your firepower, you always have a chance.
Yeah, just in games then at the weekend at 5 o'clock in Kenny Park, Loughrea, Capitagal, which should be a great spectacle. And then you have the 2 games as well over the weekend between Craughwell and Tommy Larkins, as we mentioned, and that's 5 o'clock in Kenny Park on Sunday. And then Gort face Kilkenny in a huge tie, where both sides have a chance to register their first 2 points of the campaign as well. Going on to Senior B, there always seems to be a story of a club every year in Senior B who builds and kind of, I suppose, for people in the hurling circles, they're surprised that that team has come. And like for Mike Cullen to come up straight from intermediate, it's been absolutely remarkable.
Yeah, and super performances. Even going back to seeing them play the Division 3 League final against Rahun, a very dominant performance from them that day too, inside Pearse Stadium. Again, I seen Mike Cullen. I seen them play the first day against Athenry, one of our Friday evening games actually, and they give an exhibition that day, a serious performance. Starting really fast. But like that now, a lot of good young hurlers. Obviously the likes of Fionn McDonough is going to attract attention into the future, inter-county wise and everything. That's a massive man who can hurl. But listen, John Hardiman being involved there too. John Hardiman is, I think anyone who knows anything about Galway club hurling will know who John Hardiman is, and has an excellent CV. Obviously, with his time involved with county minor teams and under 21 teams, senior teams. He's obviously the work he does in St. Rayfields, the work he did with his own club, obviously involved with Sarsfields in the one in 2015 as well. And he's very astute tactically on the line, and like their performances they've been worthy winners in all the games that they played.
They're obviously thinking of and hoping for this preliminary quarterfinal, but it's just like from first to fourth it's really tight, and if a slip up like Mike Cullen are ahead, but if Mike Cullen weren't to get a result, brings them straight back to the pack. They're obviously facing Kilnadine Leitrim, which is first versus second. Kilnadine Leitrim on 4 points. Then Athenry and Ormore Mary both on 4 points. So it's like similar to some of the games in senior. Like this is it's really fascinating now in this group. Like it nearly feels like it's a 6-pointer like in either game.
Yeah, it's probably of all the groups, there's probably the most permutations, I'd say, in this particular senior B group. Yeah, because Mike Cullen, as you rightly pointed out, undefeated so far, whereas all the other teams have beaten each other, like that are on the 4 points. Obviously, Athenry a very good victory over Kilnadima, which brought them back into it after the defeat to Mike Cullen. And Kilnadima to go and beat Ormore then was a very good result for them. So like it is very much up in the air. Like Mike Cullen, even though they're out ahead, 2 very tough games left, obviously with Kilnadima and then Ormore to come. So it's of all of the groups in all across the senior, like it's probably the hardest one to know what's going to happen. I know I keep talking about scoring forwards, but Kilnadima, for instance, have a lot of them. Obviously, Colin Malloy is a prodigious talent, but like there's obviously Brian's a super club hurler still. Stephen Roach, at the back, really, really good club player. Kilnadima, great setup involved there. Obviously, Tony Ward, massive amount of experience. You can see that even when his stint in Doon and Limerick as well. Where got a brilliant tune out of them as well. So like Tony knows what he's at. So that should be an intriguing battle on the line tactically as well. Like obviously between Mike Cullen and Kilnadima, the wide open spaces of Pearse Stadium could well suit some of the Kilnadima players too. We're thinking about it, although Mike Cullen be well used to playing there.
Like you're looking at Behet Tina, you're saying it's a huge game, but looking at goal difference wise, you're still even thinking with 2 games to go, it's probably likely that they're going to be in some sort of a battle. Be just with, I suppose, Tina sitting bottom 0, minus 21, Behet sitting 0, minus 20.
Yeah, it is the biggest game of the year for both of them so far, without a doubt. The loser of that game is probably in big trouble. Just in terms of even for instance, regardless of which of them win, if Behet win or if Tina win, they'll be on 2 points, but they'll also have the head-to-head over the other team. So even we'll say hypothetically Behet win the next day and they get beaten their last group game, and Tina lose the next day and win their last group game. If they're both stuck on 2 points, they have the head-to-head in that scenario, for instance. So it is a gigantic game. It's a gigantic game for both teams. Now, obviously, both teams will be trying to get to 4 points and maybe try to get back in the mix of getting, maybe trying to get sneaky to 3rd place. But I suppose the first thought is probably we have to win this game to avoid a relegation playoff. And it is we talk about games being big games being involved in people. Are they going to qualify for quarterfinal, Premier quarterfinal? Games that will avoid you going potentially into relegation playoffs are just as big in their own way, probably bigger in some ways.
Yeah, so that group, it's like Mike Cullen 6, and then Kilnadima, Ormore Mary, Athenry all on 4 points, and Behet and Tina Aberdeenry at the bottom on 0 points. Then Senior B Group 2, you have Portumna first, 6 points, Lee Mellow second, 4, Athenry third with 4, Pierce's fourth with 2, Mulla fifth with 2, and Hashker Fohana on 0. Portumna really looked like a side who could push on from Senior B this year. It's like they're really similar to Thomas's, you could say, feeding youngsters into this squad as well as the experienced heads.
Yeah, Portumna, the Portumna team, what can you say about them over the years? Just magical players. There's quite a few of them still playing. And it would have hurt Portumna to go down to Senior B. There's no doubt about it. And you can see that since that has happened, they have rallied the troops and they've really had good performances. They were incredibly unlucky last year not to be Gorton Loughrea, incredibly unlucky. somewhat probably more people wouldn't have expected at the time. And as you rightly said, like they really do look like they're ready to push on this year. A great spine to their team still. You know, Conor O'Hare, full back again. You know, Martin Dolphin, Andy Smith still going well. You've McLaughlin coming back into the team now, giving that bit of injection of youth, as you said. Ronan O'Mara, like we talked about Gerard Farrer a while ago about outstanding club players. Like Ronan O'Mara's outstanding club forward goal. Like he's scoring ability is unbelievable as well. And obviously, of course, there's one Joe Kenning, which you know, is a game changer for any team. You know, like Portumna have been excellent this year. They put up serious scores, putting in really good performances. And again, I think I mentioned it with Sarsfields earlier, like the setup involved with Portumna is like, talk about high powered, like it's they mean business.
Win over Mulla should see them into the preliminary quarterfinals. Then it's where it gets interesting because it looks like a real battle at the moment between Lee Mellows and Ardrahan. Obviously Ardrahan jockeying Lee Mellows early on in the championship, but both now on 4 points. Mellows just ahead on goal difference slightly. Mellows face Pierces, who want to keep their hopes alive this weekend as well. Ardrahan facing a struggle in a Haskell for one this year, and then like Lee Mellows are to face Portumna in the final game. So it will be interesting to see, will that go right down to the wire between them two teams?
Yeah, I expected it will. Like, and even going back to the Portumna Mulla game, like Mulla, you know, won the first day against Pierce's 3-point maybe loss or so against Mellows. Maybe Mellows might push on small bit at the end of that game. Mulla have been very competitive this year. And I expect them to be competitive against Portumna, a team that would have played a lot over the years as well, you know, because in their heyday, Portumna's heyday, Mulla were right up there at the top of the Galway Championship as well, being a really competitive team. A lot of those players still involved, so it should be, you know, Mulla result in that, like, really throws the group wide open, you know, puts them back in 4. Portumna left on 6 then, obviously going into the last game against Mellows. So this group, again, the senior B groups, I think in particular, like there's massive competitiveness in them, like, huge, and there's so many permutations as well. Mellows and Ardrahan, like, if Portumna were to win against Mulla, as you say, they're in the top 2. With the top 2 both in Senior B playing the senior championship next year when it's 16 teams, like, it's a massive prize to get. And you know, listen, with results to date and form to date, it looks like it'd be a shootout between Ardrahan and Mellows, but very hard to know. Like, Ardrahan, you know, has a very good performance against Mellows. They're probably a bit disappointed themselves against Portumna. We talked about how good Portumna have been, so it should be intriguing games. Like, you know, Haskra need a result. You know, they need a result. Like, so they are up against it, and like, obviously when you have like players like Colin Porrick, Mannion, like, you always have a chance as well. So, you know, no result surprise you. Ardrahan's form is probably better. Played in the under 20B final last week against Ballinderry in a really good game. Actually, that was on Quebec and team. You know, they're going to get players from that as well. So Ardrahan are a club that are probably on the up. I talked about the infrastructure that has been carried out in Sarsfields. A lot of infrastructure work has gone on in Ardrahan as well. And, you know, they've been, over the last number of years, have been involved in the business end of A championships. Those really good Clare and Bridge teams at under 20 level, it's Ardrahan often that they were playing in those finals. So Ardrahan have a lot of young talent. And I'd say it's a big goal of theirs to get into the senior top 16 for next year. Lee Mellows, like, you know, 3 county finals in a row not too long ago. A lot of those players still there. Massive know-how how to win a game. You know, Conor Kavanagh, great man to get a goal still. You know, Adrian Morrissey playing super stuff for them. So, you know, again, Jeffrey Linsky involved with them. Massive CD built up as well. Like, so it's a really interesting race to see who can won it first, second in that, and obviously the third team being involved in the latter in the championship, particularly to see who's the top 2 for promotion next year or into the senior championship.
Is this something you've done with the hurling committee, like, of all the different possible permutations?
Yeah, actually, we've been kind of having a look at it, but there's nearly too many. Being honest with you, there's nearly too many. In Senior B in particular, there's so many permutations involved in it. Like it's no team is out of it yet. You know what I mean? And like that's probably has been in general one of the successes about the gradings of the championships the last number of years, is that teams find the competitive balance at the level they're playing at, and it does lead, by and large, now it leads to very even games, where any team can beat any team on a given day. And like that's great from a championship spectacle point of view as well. Like that, you're not going down to Dublin Park, or you're not going over to Loughrea the next day. No, listen, Team X is definitely going to beat Team Y. It's great to know that. Even just as a neutral spectator going, I'm going to see a game today, and it's really hard to call.
Just then touching on the intermediate quarterfinals, the doubleheader in Gort, the first game up between Rahoon and Crofwell. It's a tough one to call this. Obviously, Crofwell started their campaign off very brightly against Carnmore. I suppose a bit of a hammering last day out. Hard to know where they're at. Rahoon coming through that group, topping the table as well.
Yeah, like it's. I'd say if you asked people in Crowell, honestly, I'd say they're in bonus territory. The win against Carnmore in the first round really set them up for this, and they followed it up with a good victory over Quebec. Didn't go well for them the last day, but I suppose they were already qualified. For Crowell, really, it's a shot of nothing. There probably isn't massive expectation levels on them. I know they would have lost in the last few rounds a few players to the senior team. Even the last, young Sean Gilligan came on and scored a point for the senior team. Actually, he would have been on the intermediate team, for instance. So like there's probably no pressure on the Crowell team the next year, which is always, from a team point of view, is always a great way to go in. Rahoon are a team who the last number of years have been, probably hoping to win the intermediate championship. I referenced the Division 3 final there earlier, where they played Mike Cullen. Weren't at their best that evening, but lots of development work going on around. Still a very good spine to that team. Even you take someone like the athleticism that Eamon Brannigan has, for instance, and like there isn't many better men in the county than William Mackey to catch a ball, for instance. Like, so Rahoon probably expected to win. But Crowell in a position where they've nothing to lose. So be an interesting game now to see how that goes, because there's probably an expectation level around Rahoon as well to see how they cope with that. But it should be intriguing, yeah.
The game after that then, Ceylon and Canberra. Ceylon really sent out a statement because Turlockmore have been a standout team at intermediate level, but the way in which they really, I suppose, slaughtered them in that game in Hume, and then Canberra coming into this, I suppose, where you could say luck was on their side with that goal difference. I think Annadown defeated them and were then 3 points off getting into a quarterfinal.
Yeah, it's small margins, and I think, like, we've seen it probably the last few years, obviously in the COVID years in the senior championship, when we had groups of 4, how cutthroat they can be. And the intermediate championship didn't like that. Obviously, with it being a 16-team championship, 4 groups of 4, there wasn't much room for manoeuvre in terms of mistakes. That group really went down to the wire, as you say. Another goal either way, and it changes the complexion of things completely. Ceylon, I haven't been able to see Ceylon this year, but the results superly impressive. Obviously, massive victory over Turlockmore the last day. But even the day before, I think Ballinderrian got 1-3 in the last few minutes to get a draw against Ceylon. Ceylon are a team that mean business, obviously. Huge work going on there as well. I know I'm praising a lot of clubs here, but Ceylon have infrastructure-wise put massive amount of hurling in a non-traditional hurling area, and I think have really, I suppose, grabbed something with the community there, and have created something. And I know, you can see in their social media posts and everything else, there seems to be a lot of excitement in their club about the potential of potentially getting to an intermediate semi-final. I've seen Canberra once this year. I've seen them play Clarenbridge in Quebec, and they were very impressive that day, actually, even without Conor Whelan as well. playing a very young team. Colm Catlin, I think, is the boss there. And obviously, Colm has huge experience, obviously, playing intercounty himself, being involved in the Offaly set up there the last number of years as well. But he's playing a very young team and seems to be trying to develop something. Obviously, not having Conor Whelan for the last number of rounds is massive. Like, Conor Whelan is, the top probably 4 or 5 hurlers in the entire country that every team would want. So, that's not having him at club level has to be very difficult. But to be honest with you, I couldn't call that game. I really couldn't. Without having seen Cylon myself this year, couldn't call it. Really hard to know. People will see the name, go, Kilvary win that, but Cylon, the results are on the board this year, so you'd have to respect that too.
Then as well, you have the 2 other intermediate quarterfinals taking place on Sunday. The first one up, Meath Aircourt and Abbey and Meath Aircourt have been a side where people have been surprised that they haven't made that jump, and I suppose they didn't start the campaign terrifically, getting a draw against Carramore, which you would have expected them to win, but they have finished the group strongly. Coming into this one against an Abbey side who finished second in their group.
Yeah, I suppose you're probably right. A lot of people have, you ask someone for the last number of years who would think they'd win intermediate. If you ask 10 people, probably 5 or 6 of them would say Meath Aircourt. And they have been in the latter end of things and probably been themselves incredibly disappointed not to get over the line. Obviously, a very close game with their near neighbours in Clymer in semi-final last year. They probably seem to be coming to the boil at the right time. They seem to have timed their run well this year. Be interested to see how they do get on. They have a lot of good talent. I've seen their junior A's play a number of games the last number of years, not this year now, and even very competitive at junior A level as well with your second team and your first team is intermediate, suggesting that you have a bit of strength and depth. Abbey probably disappointed with the performance against Clymer, I'd imagine. Took a bit of a beating. Both were already through, so interesting to see how they come out of that. Plenty of good hurlers in Abbey. I see Teddy Moran scoring a huge amount for them this year as well. So probably an intriguing game as well. On form, on results for the last number of years and how they've been going, you'd think Meath Aircourt, but Abbey have a great tradition too, and I'm sure they won't go down without a fight.
I suppose similar to Abbey, Turlockmore getting that beat in the side on today, but they were already through, coming up against Clymer. But you're nearly thinking already Clymer just have that final against Mike Cullen on their minds going into this one, just the way they lost it.
Yeah,
it's a real driving force, you can imagine, for them this week now heading into this.
Yeah, I can't imagine it takes much to motivate the Clymer players this year in terms of I'd say that drive from within themselves has to be gigantic. Just one of the most heartbreaking ways to, I suppose, not win a final. It was very, very tough on them. But seem to have responded, in fairness, the right way this year in terms of having felt sorry for themselves. Have obviously got back down onto it, getting really good results, strong performances. Lots of talent, big men too. Big and physical, imposing team. That should, that will probably feel very confident themselves, and rightly so. They should. Turlockmore, I think you mentioned it earlier, had been one of the standard bearers of intermediate the last number of years. Been in a few semi-finals. Very unlucky a few years ago, actually, not to make a final. Probably lost a few more players to the senior team this year than maybe in years past. Obviously, we mentioned the fact that the Turlockmore seniors had a few injuries, and that probably called upon. They probably had to call upon a few players that might have been eligible for the intermediates otherwise than that. Been a few players injured for them as well. Missed a few games. You take someone like Ronan Badger, missed a few games to them. Who'd be a serious operator at that level still. So on form and paper, you say Clymer, but like we've mentioned before, Turlockmore, abundance of hurlers, could come with a performance too. Wouldn't surprise anyone.
You have two double headers there, Saturday in Gort and then Sunday in Duggan Park. Just the relegation semis as well. Clarenbridge and Kilbeakenty at 5 o'clock in Kinvara on Saturday, and then 12 o'clock in Pierce Stadium on Sunday, Spiddle and Castlegare. Vital for, I suppose, Spiddle and Kilbeakenty here in a relegation semi-final. They'll want to keep their first teams at this level, but as well for Clarenbridge and Castlegare, they'll want, I suppose, the younger players in the club playing at the intermediate level compared to junior and playing at that higher level.
Absolutely, yeah. Like if you take Spiddle and Castlegare, like Castlegare, for instance, Castlegare have had an intermediate team for, to be honest with you, as long as I can remember, which is an impressive feat. Like to have a team, two teams playing at those levels, and they won't want to lose that. Of course, they won't, because it is a great breeding ground for younger players to be able to introduce them at that level before potentially kicking on to senior. And similar for Clarenbridge. Clarenbridge, after getting back up to intermediate, they will want to go straight back down. And, we talk about this conveyor belt of players that are coming at Clarenbridge, and they are coming. They'll want them playing at the highest grade possible too, of course. And you mentioned, like, for Spiddle and Kilbeakenty about keeping their status. It's like obviously gigantically important for both those clubs. Spiddle, since they won the Junior A, have been very competitive at intermediate level. Probably, haven't done themselves justice this year, I'd say. I'd be expecting them to come with a big performance the weekend, because they have enough talent to do that. And for Kilbeakenty, huge as well, obviously. Certainly will want to keep their status. Another club that has done massive work infrastructure-wise. We've managed to play a few games in Kilbeakenty this year. It's been a super venue. All the clubs have been delighted with it. In conjunction with Beha, massive work going on with Mighty Cusick's. I see they've an under 12 team at the moment, and I think they're unbelievable altogether. So that's obviously a good few years off for them, but like every club dreams, and Kilbeakenty is no different than any other club. And part of that is keeping your status as best you can. Kilbeakenty's last two their poorest performance, obviously the first day against Aircourt, but their last two performances have been much improved. I think they ran Carnmore to 4 points, and Carnmore, a good intermediate team. They got, as we talked about against Cromwell, that cost them. But so Kilbeakenty's results seem to be improving game on game. So it'll be interesting to see how they get on against probably a team that's a bit of a mix in terms of Clarenbridge, between having that bit of experience with like Cindy Collins and Owen Ford, and then some younger players playing as well. So two interesting games, obviously, and as we talked about earlier, just as important in their own way as as a quarter final in the intermediate. It's like, it's to those clubs involved in it, it's just as vital.
And just in relation to the streaming this weekend, Claude, is it 4 games again this weekend?
Yeah, the doubleheader in Athenry on Saturday, and the doubleheader in Athenry on Sunday as well. Both being streamed. Obviously, if you bought the season ticket, you have access to them, and they're £10 for the day as well, the day pass. And the plan is also actually to stream the under 20 B or A final, I should say, between Turlockmore and Sarsfields the following Wednesday. That'll be a standalone thing. I'm sure the links to that will go out in due course, but that's the plan. Yeah, I know, like the streaming, we've been delighted with the streaming. Numbers have been really good. Feedback has been good. New company had it this year, and in general it's gone quite well for us, so we're delighted. Obviously for people, mobility issues or whatever, can't make it out, but also for the diaspora, really, like that's makes a big difference. It's nice to be able to see or to keep in touch with what's going on, particularly when it's your own club. If your own club is on the stream. I think it probably, of all the stuff that came out of the COVID years in the GA, it's one of the best developments and initiatives that happened as a result of it.
Absolutely, and some huge games to look forward to this weekend. Claude, thanks a million for your time.
No problem, Paul. Thanks.